while this is going on, the great academic purge of skeptical climate scientists. And this article describes what's happened to someone I've quoted in my books over the years, Professor Judy Curry. And well, let me read the story and then we'll talk about it. A climate advocacy group called Skeptical Science hosts a list of academics that it has labeled climate misinformers. I'll tell you something about skeptical science in a second, which is not in this article, but it's extremely relevant. The list includes 17 academics and is intended as a blacklist. We know of this intent because one of the principals of skeptical science, a blogger called Dana Nusitelli, said so last Friday, writing of one academic on their list, quote, "If you look at the statements we catalogued and debunked on her, it should make her unhireable in academia." So this Skeptical Science is an organization that is dedicated to destroying the careers of climate scientists who don't parrot the official narrative. So the story goes on. That so-called unhireable academic is Professor Judy Curry, formerly chair of the School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at Georgia Tech, and a fellow of both the American Geophysical Union and American Meteorological Society. By any conventional academic metric, Curry has compiled an impressive record over many decades. The idea that she would be unhireable would appear laughable. Not today. And he goes on, but there is nothing funny about skeptical science. Today, Curry should be a senior statesperson in the atmospheric sciences community. Instead, she is out of academia. She attributes that, at least in part, to being placed on the skeptical science blacklist and its use as expressed by Nusitelli to make her unhireable. The writer says, I asked Professor Curry about the situation. She explained in 2012, this is a quote, "I was informed by my dean that the administration wanted me to step down as chair. While there were several reasons for this, one obvious reason was extreme displeasure by several activist climate scientists, brackets, with their noses in the trough, who had a very direct pipeline to the dean. So Curry stepped down and started looking for administrative positions at other universities. At the time, I was getting numerous inquiries from academic headhunters, encouraging me to apply for major administrative positions ranging from dean to vice chancellor for research. I applied for several of these and actually interviewed for 2 of them. I did not make it to the final shortlist. The headhunter gave Curry the following feedback from the universities. They thought I was an outstanding candidate, looked excellent on paper, articulated a strong vision, and interviewed very well in person. The showstopper was my public profile in the climate debate, as evidenced by a simple Google search." So the writer says, indeed, my own Google search of Judy Curry, confirmed by others on my Twitter timeline, the Skeptical Science blacklist page for her appears on the first page of Google results. And for me, he said, it was the top listing. Now, and this, of course, can be understood by the fact that Google answers to the same web and thus promotes the same agenda. And I'll tell you about Skeptical Science. It was created by a guy called John Cook. John Cook is overwhelmingly the source constantly quoted of 97% of climate scientists say humans are the main cause of climate change. Parroted all the time. And when someone went through the 12,000 papers from which this number was gleaned, they found that around 41, you can also see quotes of 60, papers from the 12,000 actually said that humans are the main cause of climate change. What a scam this climate change is. And it's being used to create a global tyranny. I've talked in these podcasts about the extraordinary consequences for people in Africa of bringing out from the earth the cobalt needed for the batteries to run electric cars, and the fantastic problem that getting rid of those electric car batteries after something like a 10-year life will have for the environment. But of course, any area of the environment, apart from climate change, the climate change hoax, has just been forgotten by the green movement now. And of course, one of the ascetic, and more than ascetic, because they make such noise for people living near them, consequences of the climate change hoax are wind turbines, which are destroying landscapes and seascapes and creating a technocracy environment instead of what we had before. Beautiful, beautiful places and seascape panoramas being destroyed by wind turbines. And you may have noticed how bloody big they are. In fact, they make some of them, just down the road from me, a place in Newport on the Isle of Wight. You see them sometimes being floated up on barges up the Medina River to go across to the mainland. They're bloody massive. So, what do we do with them when they're finished? When the blades are finished? Because the blades are massive. Oh, we never thought about that. Well, of course you never thought about that, because it goes against the narrative of what needs to happen. Anyway, so here's the story from this week. Actually, just a few days beyond this week. Green energy. Wind turbines are piling up in landfills and can't be recycled. Green energy is just one giant grift operation, says this story. A wind turbine's blades can be longer than a Boeing 747 wing. So at the end of their lifespan, they can't just be hauled away. First, you need to saw through the lissome fiberglass using a diamond-encrusted industrial saw to create 3 pieces small enough to be strapped onto a tractor trailer. The municipal landfill in Casper, Wyoming, is the final resting place of 870 blades whose days making renewable energy have come to an end. Tens of thousands of aging blades are coming down from steel towers around the world, and most have nowhere to go but landfills. In the US alone, about 8,000 will be removed in each of the next 4 years. Europe, which has been dealing with the problem longer, has about 3,800 coming down every year through at least to 2022. And it's going to get worse. Most were built more than a decade ago when installations were less than a fifth of what they are now. So knock that on a few years and see how many unrecyclable blades that are going to have to be dealt with. Built to withstand hurricane force winds, the blades can't easily be crushed, recycled, or repurposed. That's created an urgent search for alternatives in places that lack wide open prairies. In the US, they go to a handful of landfills that accept them in Law Mills, Iowa, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Casper, where they will be interred in stacks that reach 30 feet under. The wind turbine blade will be there ultimately forever, said Bob Capadona, Chief Operating Officer for the North American unit of Paris-based company, which is searching for better ways to deal with the massive waste. Most landfills are considered a dry tomb. The damage, the real damage to the environment that's being done by responding to the hoax of environmental damage caused by human-caused climate change is extraordinary. You know, I mentioned, was it last week, the week before, about how the green thing was, oh yes, we must go to diesel cars. And people bought diesel cars thinking I'm doing the right thing, and then they realized diesel cars were killing people who breathed in the fumes from the exhaust with the particulates in them. And then they started discouraging people to buy diesel cars. We're green, we are.